بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين. Welcome to another episode of the Heroes of Karbala. Amongst the people and amongst those involved in the story and the tragedy of Karbala are people of various different backgrounds, various different places, various different cultures and races and tribes. And one of the most important and greatest lessons that we get from the tragedy of Karbala, from the story of Karbala in its entirety, is the fact that each and every one of these people who come from different backgrounds, from different tribes, cultures, societies, places, have all come together for one cause and are willing to give their lives and everything that they have for this particular cause. And some people have realized this cause and realized this early on in their life. They've joined Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam from Medina. Others have realized on the journey, when Imam alayhi salam is on the journey from Medina to Mecca, and from Mecca to then towards Iraq, people are joining him all along the way. However, there's one individual in the story of Karbala who is an inspiration and a hope for each and every one of us, each and every individual that reads and learns about the story of Karbala. And that is an individual who isn't with Imam Hussein alayhi salam at Medina or at Mecca or on the way to Iraq, or even when he's arrived into Karbala for the first 9 days that he's in Karbala, he's not with him. This, of course, who I'm speaking about is Hurr Ibn Yazid al Riyahi, or Hurr Ibn Yazid al Tamimi, who is the general and commander of the army, or the 1,000 men force that's been sent by Ibn Ziyad towards Imam Hussein alayhi salam to prevent him from entering into Kufa. Hurr Ibn Yazid is a resident of Kufa. He's been sent as the leader of the army towards Imam Hussein alayhi salam to prevent him from entering into Kufa. When Hurr arrives at that place, which is in between the crossroads which are going towards Kufa and modern day Karbala, Dhu Hasm, at that place he blocks the way of Imam Hussein alayhi salatu salam. He doesn't allow Imam to go towards Kufa. And he says that I've been informed, I've been told by Ibn Ziyad to prevent you from going any further. At that moment in time, Imam Hussein alayhi salam says a statement which is very common in the Arabic language. He says, "Thaqalat ummaka ya Hurr." May your mother weep for you. But Hurr doesn't reply as people would have replied if ordinarily this statement is made. And this statement is made as a way to insult a person, to abuse a person, to remind a person of his existence and reality. You say, may your mother never have given birth to you, or may your mother weep for you, may you have been a miscarried child so that your mother would have wept over you. Instead, Hurr replies with a very interesting reply which gives us an insight into his own reality. He replies with a reply saying that if anybody else had said this to me, I would have said it back to them. But I can't say it back to you because your mother is Sayyidatun Nisa al-Alameen. Your mother is Fatimah Zahra Salamullah alayha. Your mother is the best of ladies, the best of women in this world and in the next world. In any case, Imam alayhi salatu salam demonstrates his character and he gives us a lesson and insight to how to behave. When Hurr comes, he prevents Imam from going towards Kufa. The time for Salat comes, Imam leads the prayer, Hurr and his followers pray behind the Imam. And there's limited supply of water they've come with. So they run out of water, it's hot, it's in the desert. Imam Hussein alayhi salam orders his supply of water to be opened and be given to Hurr and his forces, and not just to the people but also to the cavalry, to the horses and camels as well. This is a reminder that, remember, there's going to be a time only a few days later when you're going to prevent water coming to me. And I know that that's going to happen, but I'm not going to prevent you having water just because you're going to prevent me from having the water. Imam Hussein alayhi salam does not go towards Kufa, and instead Hurr says that we will prevent you from entering Kufa. We'll still prevent you from entering Kufa because this is what we've been asked to do. This is what our role is. And Imam alayhi salatu salam then changes his direction and goes towards Karbala. When he goes towards Karbala, this place of Karbala, this land of Karbala, it is not a city and a place and a area and houses and shops and buildings in the way that we know Karbala to be today. Rather, Karbala does not exist as a place or a city, it's just a desert. There is a group of people, a tribe called Bani Asad, who live outside of Karbala. And the actual land of Karbala, the actual Ha'ir, the actual place where Imam Hussein alayhi salatu salam is killed and then eventually is buried, is not a city or a place that exists. Imam Hussein alayhi salam, when he arrives in that place, he stops, he changes his horse. Narrative states that he changed his horse 6 times or 7 times, but none of the horses wanted to go forward. So he stopped, he came down from the horse and he inquired. He asked the people around, he says, what is the name of this place? And they mentioned different names. A person said, this is called Shattul Furat, this is the place, the land which is adjoining Furat. The Imam said, is there any other name? So they mentioned Ghazariya, and they mentioned Nainawa, and so on and so forth. And then eventually a very old person was brought, and this old person said that this place is also known as Karbala. And he says that I heard my elder saying that whoever comes on this place, whoever comes to this land, whoever comes and stays here, that person will go through pains and affliction. So if you're intending to stay here, don't stay here. Imam Hussein alayhi salam says, this is the land which I have promised and I'm going to stay here. Now the days pass. 7th of Muharram comes, and on 7th of Muharram there's an agreement that there should be no more access to water to the tents of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Who is the person who makes this proposal? It is Hurr. 9th of Muharram in the morning, there's a proposal from Umar ibn Sa'd to fire the arrow, the first arrow towards the tents of Imam Hussein. This proposal and this intent to fire the arrow is also made by Hurr on the morning of 9th of Muharram. On the morning of 9th Muharram, Umar ibn Sa'd fires an arrow towards the tents of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Imam Hussein says to Abu al-Fadl Abbas, Abbas, go out and tell Umar ibn Sa'd that we want one more night. And if he wants to start the fighting, then start it tomorrow morning. And Abu Fadl Abbas goes out, he says to Umar ibn Sa'd, we want one more night. This one night is so crucial that it's going to change the face of the story of Karbala. From the 9th day, Tasu'ah, through to the night of Ashura, and then the day of Ashura. Because the 10th night and the 10th day are going to be the special days, the significant days, the days which are going to change the course of Islam and of history forever. On this 10th night, the night of Ashura, one of the Yazidi forces comes into the tent of Hurr, and he looks at him and he sees him very worried, and he says to him that you're looking very worried. Why is it that you look worried? So he says to him, famous statement that you always hear, that I see myself in between heaven and hell, in between paradise and hell, and I want to decide, where do I want to go? The morning of 10th of Muharram came. On the morning of 10th of Muharram, Hurr came to Umar ibn Sa'd and he said that, are you really going to fight this man, son of Zahra, son of the Holy Prophet of Islam? Umar ibn Sa'd said, yes, it is going to be a fight in which heads will roll and hands will be cut off. So Hurr asks him that even after you know what he is and what his status is, yes. Umar ibn Sa'd says yes. Hurr goes silent and he makes his decision. That is the moment on the morning of Ashura when he's made his decision. His decision is to go towards the side, to choose paradise and to abandon the hellfire. He goes towards Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam. When he goes towards Imam Hussein salawatullahi wasalamu alayhi, some of the narratives state that he says to his son or to his servants that I want you to blindfold me and tie my hands. I want to go as though I am remorseful towards the grandson of the Holy Prophet. He goes and he throws himself off the horse and he lies at the feet of Imam Hussein alayhi salam and he says to him, oh my master, is there a chance that I would be forgiven? Imam says to him that surely there is a chance for you to be forgiven. You have been forgiven. I have forgiven you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has also forgiven you. Then he says and he narrates something very special and interesting from what had happened. He said that there was a voice that I heard when I was leaving Kufa, and that voice said to me that you are given the basharat, the good tidings, the good news of paradise. So he says, and I heard this voice, I said to myself, how can I go to paradise when I'm going to fight the son of the daughter of the Holy Prophet? Because he knows, he realized. But the key is that you have to realize in time. He realized. Imam Hussein alayhi salam says to him that you, as a result of this decision that you made, which was not an easy decision, it is not a simple decision for a person to make. Why? Because if it was an easy decision, all the other people who are with the forces of Yazid and fighting against Imam Hussein, they also would have made a decision. But they didn't. Because it was a difficult decision to make. It was a decision where you had to leave all your doubts and be firm and certain that Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam was the one. And that you had to be willing to sacrifice everything for that reality, for that truth, that which was embodied in the personality of Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam. When he comes, he invites his son to go first into the battlefield. He says to Imam Hussein, give my son permission to go into the battlefield. Imam Hussein wistfully says something that is also very heartbreaking. Imam Hussein alayhi salam says to Hurr, you've come to me and it is customary for us to present something as a gift to to present something to our guests. But you've come to me at a time where I have nothing to present. Usually somebody comes to our house and we say, we want you to have a meal or have a cup of tea. And if they refuse everything, we say, at least have some water. At least have a glass of or a cup of water before you go. This is the aqal, the least that we can do, and has been mentioned in the riwayat that if a person comes to you and you don't give them food or anything else, at least give them water. Imam Hussein alayhi salam doesn't even have water to give to Hurr Ibn Yazid. So he says, you've come to me at a time where I have nothing to present to you, I have nothing to give to you. Hurr says that, give permission to my son to go towards the battlefield. Imam Hussein ﷺ gives him permission. His son goes, he fights. When he is falling from the horse, he calls out to his father. When he calls out to his father, he wants to get up and go towards his son. Imam Hussein ﷺ forces him to sit down. He says, Hurr, you have to sit down. He says, my son is calling me. He's about to die. Imam said it is not right for a father to go to the body of his son, to the moment where his son is about to die. It is not fitting. Imam Hussein ﷺ forces Hurr to stay. He himself goes towards the body of the son of Hurr, and he puts him in his lap. He breathes his last in the lap of Imam Hussein ﷺ. Following him, now Hurr goes into the battlefield. When Hurr goes into the battlefield, he addresses the people, and he addresses them with a very harsh and hard and very frank way. He says, O people of Kufa, a foolish and bad example for others you surely set when you invited the son of the daughter of the Prophet to come to you, and then you grieved him and surrounded him from all directions, forbidding him from going anywhere in Allah's spacious land so that he and his family might be safe, rendering him as a captive in your hands, unable to help him. You have prohibited him, his ladies, his children and his companions from the water of the Euphrates, of which all the people drink, and even the swines and dogs are able to feel the coolness. Look and see how thirst has subdued them. Evil is the way whereby you have succeeded in treating the progeny of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. May Allah never permit you to drink on the day where everybody will be dying of thirst. Now people started to shoot arrows at him to the extent that he had to retreat. Then he went back into the battlefield. As he went back into the battlefield, he surrounded them, he fought, and he was killed. When he was killed, Imam Hussein ﷺ went towards the body of Hurr. When he came towards the body of Hurr, he noticed there was a wound on his forehead and the blood kept on gushing out and it wouldn't stop. They tried many things to stop the blood from flowing out, but they could not. Everything would become soaked with the blood and it would not be able to be used. Eventually, Imam Hussein ﷺ took out a handkerchief that had been sewed by his mother Zahra salamullah alayha, and he tied that on the wound. When he tied it on the wound, the blood flow stopped. After this, when the day of Ashura passed, the forces of Yazid, they picked out Hurr Ibn Yazid al Riyahi from the place where he had been killed, and they buried him in the land which belonged to him. That's why often when we go for ziyarah, people ask this question: why is it that Hurr is buried far away from all the other shuhada of Karbala? This is the reason, that his tribe took his body because he was the leader of the tribe. All the people from his tribe, they took his body and they buried him in that land which belonged to him, and this is where his grave is. One day there was discussion and debate going on in Karbala regarding the freshness of the bodies of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. That would the bodies of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salatu salam be fresh, and would they be the same as they were when they were buried all those years ago? So one scholar saw a dream that go towards the grave of Hurr. Why? Because there's water in the grave, so we want you to clean up the grave and take out the body and then place it next to it so that the water doesn't go into the grave. When they dug the grave in order to renovate it and move it to another side next to it, they opened the grave and they saw that the body of Hurr was just as though it had been buried a few hours before. And on that, everybody knew that on the head, on the forehead, is tied a handkerchief that was tied by Imam Hussein ﷺ, and is the handkerchief of Zahra Salamullah alayha. So the scholar says that I asked the person who had gone down into the grave to untie the handkerchief and to put another handkerchief in its place, so that we could have the handkerchief of Zahra Salamullah alayha. He says that as soon as I told the person to do that, and I placed the other handkerchief in its place, the blood started to flow again. And we continued changing the handkerchiefs until the blood continued to flow, until we said, no, we must put the handkerchief of Zahra Salamullah alayha back. When they put the handkerchief of Zahra Salamullah alayha back in its place, then the blood flow stopped. When the grave was closed, the scholar came back to the community and he said, don't ask about the graves of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salatu wassalam. I went to visit the grave of Hurr Ibn Yazid al Riyahi, and this is what happened. When this is the state of the body of Hurr, who was the person who was saved at the last minute because of his love for Imam Hussein ﷺ, then what about the bodies of Ahlul Bayt ﷺ? There's no doubt about them being intact and in their place. The greatest lesson from the story of Hurr is that we, every single one of us, each and every one of us, have no right at any point in time, number one, to ever give up hope. Hurr ibn Yazid al Riyahi is the one who's responsible for bringing Imam Hussein ﷺ to Karbala, yet he's saved. Why? Because he recognizes before his death the reality. Imam Hussein ﷺ says for him, Anta hurrun fi dunya wal akhirah. You are free in this world and in the hereafter. And the other thing is that I don't have a right to judge anybody if they decide to change. Why? What happens in our communities? Usually a person, if they had been a bad person, eventually they realize that they want to change, they want to become a better person. Then what happens? As soon as they come back into our centers, into our masajid, into our Husainiyas, into our Imam Bargas, straight away we see people saying, what is wrong with this person? Yesterday he used to be X, Y, Z, you doing all this haram, today he's in the mosque. Of course, anybody can change at any time. And so we should always leave the door open, because Imam Hussein ﷺ always left the door open. Therefore we shouldn't judge. If a person wants to sincerely change and become a better person, then that should be done without judgment for their past, as long as sincerely they have made a decision to leave all of that in the past and become a new and better person. These are the most important lessons from the story of Hurr. Inshallah ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us tawfiq to be that person who lives their life in accordance with the commands of Imam Hussein in our lives, but more importantly, leave this world with this love and obedience and ta'at in our lives. And when we die with this love in our hearts. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين.